London, September 11th, 1992. At 2:58 in the morning, a man in a quiet flat pours a glass of water and checks his watch like it's any other night. He doesn't know 6 other men are doing the same thing in Berlin, Paris, Rome, Athens, and Madrid, and that all of them have been tracked for over a year without ever being seen together. For 14 months, MI6 built a plan so compartmentalized that even the killers wouldn't know the full map. At 0300 hours GMT, the signal is silent, but the killings begin. And within 72 hours, Europe's terror network collapses under Operation Continental Sweep. The Abu Nidal Organization doesn't run like an army. It runs like a virus. Small nodes, isolated carriers, and a leadership structure designed to survive decapitation. By 1992, intelligence services across Europe had learned the hardest lesson in counterterrorism. You could arrest the foot soldiers and still lose the war, because the planners stayed invisible. ANO's European command model was brutally smart. Instead of one headquarters, it maintained 6 coordinators, each responsible for logistics, money, safe houses, weapons movement, and local recruitment. They never met. They never shared travel routes. They never kept documents linking the others. Their defining skill wasn't violence, it was risk architecture. Every part of the network was built to fail safely. Each coordinator operated as if the others didn't exist. London managed financial flows through Middle Eastern banking channels. Berlin controlled weapons procurement from former Warsaw Pact arsenals. Paris ran document forgery and identity fabrication networks. Rome coordinated safehouse networks across southern Europe. Athens handled explosive material acquisition and storage. Madrid supervised recruitment and training logistics for North African cells. The structure was elegant in its simplicity. If one coordinator was arrested, they could betray only their own operation. The other 5 nodes would continue functioning. No single interrogation could expose the full architecture. No single raid could decapitate the network. This wasn't paranoia. This was professional compartmentalization that had evolved over 2 decades of counterintelligence pressure. Intelligence analysts called this a federated threat model. Unlike hierarchical organizations where cutting off the head kills the body, federated networks have no single point of failure. They adapt, they regenerate, they survive. And then MI6 sees something that changes the equation. In May of 1991, signals intelligence intercepts unusual communication patterns. Not between the coordinators, they're too disciplined for that, but between their support networks. Travel agents booking flights to secondary European cities, property rental inquiries in neighborhoods where ANO has no previous presence, banking transactions suggesting asset liquidation. The coordinators are about to relocate. New passports, new apartments, new handlers, new identities so clean that even MI6's most sophisticated surveillance architecture won't penetrate them for months, maybe years. If they disappear into fresh covers, they'll become ghosts again. And the cycle restarts. British intelligence had been tracking these 6 men since March of 1990. 18 months of patient observation, building pattern libraries of their movements, contacts, habits. 18 months of resisting the urge to arrest, because arrests create trials, and trials require evidence that exposes sources and methods. Better to watch and wait. But relocation changes the calculation. Once they vanish, all that accumulated intelligence becomes worthless. This isn't just a hunt for killers. It's a race against the moment the map goes dark. According to declassified MI6 assessment documents from that period, the coordinators were collectively responsible for logistical support of at least 14 attacks across Europe between 1987 and 1991. Not as the gunmen or bombers, Those were expendable operators recruited locally. But as the invisible infrastructure that made violence possible, they moved money. They secured weapons. They identified targets. They arranged escape routes. Intercepted communications from June 1991 reveal one coordinator discussing his daughter's upcoming school enrollment. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. His daughter was 8 years old and wanted to study piano. When the consequences occurred months later, she became one of dozens of family members who would learn their father lived a completely different life than they imagined. During surveillance rotations in July 1991, one MI6 field officer experienced what operational psychologists call legend fatigue, the mental exhaustion from maintaining constant vigilance while appearing ordinary. He was embedded as a building maintenance worker in the same apartment complex as the Paris coordinator. Every morning for 6 weeks, he greeted the target with casual pleasantries about weather and football. Every night, he filed reports on movement patterns and visitor logs. In the post-operation assessment, psychologists noted elevated stress markers consistent with sustained covert proximity. But the mission continued. By August 1991, MI6 presents an operational proposal to the Joint Intelligence Committee. Simultaneous elimination using autonomous teams with zero inter-team communication. The proposal sits in committee review for 2 months. Too aggressive, some argue. Too risky. Too much potential for diplomatic catastrophe if even one operation goes wrong. Then, in October 1991, ANO operatives bomb a cafe in Brussels. 12 dead, including 2 British nationals. The committee reconvenes. The proposal is approved with conditions. Complete deniability, British fingerprints. Methods must appear unconnected. MI6 guiding doctrine is simple. If you can't dismantle a federated network piece by piece, you collapse it all at once. The operation's logic isn't emotional, it's mechanical. The plan is built around 3 obstacles. No single arrest can expose the structure. Each coordinator knows only their lane. Even under interrogation, even with full cooperation, one coordinator could only burn their own network. The other 5 would continue operating. Cross-border law enforcement moves too slowly. The targets will relocate faster than bureaucracy can act. Europol was still in its infancy. Mutual legal assistance treaties required months of paperwork. Extradition proceedings could take years. ANO coordinators had relocated their networks dozens of times across decades. They were professionals at disappearance. If one strike fails, the others vanish. A single warning collapses the rest into hiding. Terror networks communicate through absence. When one coordinator goes dark unexpectedly, the others interpret this as a hostile action and initiate emergency protocols. Destroy documents, abandon residences, activate pre-positioned escape identities. So, MI6 proposes something most agencies resist: simultaneous elimination using autonomous teams with zero inter-team communication. Not because it's elegant, because it's the only way to prevent compromise. The strategy gets a name: Operation Continental Sweep. The codename is deliberately bland, something that could refer to anything from a narcotics investigation to currency tracking. Operational security begins with boring names that don't inspire questions. The trigger comes when a high-confidence signal confirms all 6 coordinators are currently in place, and the relocation timeline has started. It's not an opportunity. It's the last safe window before Europe's terror map resets. By December 1991, all 6 coordinators are confirmed in stable locations, with predictable routines. Surveillance teams report consistent patterns: same morning coffee shops, same evening walks, same weekly shopping routes. This stability won't last. The moment relocation begins, they'll abandon routine entirely. Intelligence assessment dated January 3, 1992, concludes. Operational window extends through mid-September. After that, relocation probability exceeds 70%. The committee authorizes final planning phase. Within 4 months, all elements would be in position. But first, the most critical element needed to be resolved. Ensuring 6 separate teams could execute synchronized kills without any team knowing the others existed. MI6 doesn't deploy one operation. It deploys 6 sealed boxes. Each city becomes its own universe. A team, a cover story, a logistics chain, and an exit route. The architecture has one rule. No team can expose another team, even by accident. They do not share radios. They do not share real names. They do not share extraction plans. If one cell is rolled up, it must not burn the rest. The planning consumes 14 months. By February 1992, the infrastructure framework is established. By May, all teams are positioned in their respective cities. By August, final method selection is approved. The compartmentalization is absolute. The London team believes they're executing a standalone termination of a financial facilitator. The Berlin team thinks they're part of a joint operation with German federal police targeting weapons trafficking. The Paris team operates undercover as a NATO counterintelligence exercise. None of them know the full architecture. Only 7 people in British intelligence know the complete scope. The operational commander, the JIC chairman, the foreign secretary, 3 senior MI6 officers responsible for coordination but not execution, and 1 CIA liaison officer, because American support is required for certain technical elements, and refusing to inform Washington would create diplomatic problems worse than the operation itself. The plan is named Operation Continental Sweep, and it runs on timed independence. The only shared element is the execution window and a single marker. 0300 hours GMT, Friday, September 11th. Safe flats are rented under dead identities, real people who died years earlier, but whose deaths were never properly registered in European bureaucracies. Birth certificates and national insurance numbers still exist in systems. These ghosts rent apartments, sign utility contracts, open bank accounts. One safe flat in Madrid uses the identity of a Scottish fisherman who drowned in 1978. His paperwork is immaculate because he was a real person with a real history. Vehicles are bought through cutouts. Shell companies registered in jurisdictions with weak disclosure requirements. A Peugeot in Paris purchased by a company supposedly importing office furniture. A BMW in Berlin bought by a consulting firm that exists only on paper. Each vehicle has clean registration, insurance, and maintenance records. Nothing that would trigger secondary inspection. Pre-staged equipment arrives through diplomatic pouches and military logistics channels. Medical props for the London operation. Pharmaceutical-grade compounds that mimic cardiac failure. Poisons for Paris. Compounds metabolized so quickly that toxicology screens would need to know exactly what to search for. Weapon systems for Athens. A Macmillan TAC-50 sniper rifle broken into components and shipped separately across 3 months. Explosives for Madrid. Czech-manufactured Semtex acquired through a CIA channel from Lebanese stockpiles. Surveillance furniture is hidden in ordinary rooms. Pinholes drilled in apartment walls with fiber optic cameras no thicker than sewing needles. Passive microphones embedded in electrical outlets. Line-of-sight cameras disguised as smoke detectors. One Berlin apartment has been under continuous observation for 8 months without the target ever noticing the pinhole camera positioned in the bathroom ventilation grate. Each team has a different method because pattern is evidence. If 6 men die the same way on the same weekend, the conclusion becomes obvious. MI6 needs plausible randomness, so the methods diversify by design. Madrid receives a controlled car bomb with a narrow blast cone, shaped charges designed to direct energy inward and downward, minimizing collateral damage while ensuring target elimination. The explosive load is calculated based on vehicle armor characteristics and typical occupant positioning. Paris gets poisoning engineered to mimic natural failure, a compound that triggers acute myocardial infarction symptoms indistinguishable from stress-induced heart attack. The delivery method exploits a routine the target has maintained for 3 years. Morning espresso at the same cafe. Athens is assigned sniper elimination timed to a predictable habit. The target's weekly visit to a specific park bench where he meets a contact every Saturday morning. The shooting position is pre-selected based on angle, distance, and escape route feasibility. Range: 420 meters. Clear line of sight. No witnesses in the kill zone. Rome receives a staged accident using environmental leverage, exploiting the target's apartment building's aging infrastructure and the coordinator's own security-conscious habit of checking his vehicle every morning. The method turns his caution into the vulnerability. Berlin gets an apartment raid that looks like local criminal violence. A home invasion by men wearing balaclavas, speaking German, using weapons common in Eastern European organized crime. Fast entry, maximum aggression, zero conversation. The scene will look like a robbery gone wrong or a gang retaliation. London is assigned a fake heart attack that leaves no signature if done right. Chemical inducement of cardiac arrest, using compounds that degrade within hours. The target has a medical history of mild hypertension, making the official cause of death entirely plausible. To make this work, MI6 has to solve 2 problems simultaneously: access and silence. Access means proximity, getting close without triggering instinct. Silence means no chatter, no loose ends, no celebratory signals across teams. The operation must feel like 6 unrelated tragedies scattered across Europe. And then, the most counterintuitive move. They build in ignorance. Most of the operators executing the kills do not know the scale. To them, it's one mission, one city, one target. That ignorance isn't a flaw. It's the armor. The week of September 7th, the pressure shifts. The coordinators begin acting like men who know they're about to move. Fewer meetings, shorter routes, tighter circles. That alone is dangerous, because it signals heightened suspicion. In London, the coordinator cancels 2 scheduled meetings and alters his morning walking route for the first time in 11 months. Surveillance teams note increased counter-surveillance awareness. Frequent stops to check reflections, varied walking pace, unpredictable route deviations. In Madrid, the target begins parking his vehicle in different locations each night instead of his usual assigned space. His driver notices and mentions it to a colleague who happens to be an MI6 asset. The message reaches London within 6 hours. In Athens, the coordinator misses his regular Saturday morning park visit for the first time in 43 consecutive weeks. The sniper team, already in position, has to abort. Backup plans activate immediately. Alternative locations are surveyed. The next predictable opportunity is identified. A Tuesday afternoon meeting at a cafe. MI6 teams transition from passive watch to active proximity. Not tailing like police, blending like civilians. Delivery schedules are timed to intersect with target movements. In Berlin, a package, courier, actually an MI6 operative, makes 3 separate attempts to deliver a non-existent package to the coordinator's building, creating legitimate reasons to be in the lobby and observe entry patterns. Service workers are positioned as invisible witnesses. In Paris, a street cleaning crew works the same block as the target's cafe every morning. The crew chief is British intelligence. His team includes 2 French DGSE officers providing local support. They map pedestrian traffic patterns, identify choke points, and document the target's precise routine down to which newspaper he buys and whether he adds sugar to his espresso. Routine disruption is used as a test. In Rome, a car is deliberately parked in the coordinator's usual spot. When he arrives and finds it occupied, surveillance teams watch his reaction. Does he simply park elsewhere? Or does he circle the block multiple times checking for threats? His response indicates his current threat awareness level. He parks elsewhere without apparent concern. Assessment. Not yet in active evasion mode. The risk of collapse is highest here, because approach is where humans get sloppy. In Paris, the window nearly closes when the coordinator unexpectedly cancels a predictable meal route on September 9th. He's been eating lunch at the same brasserie every Wednesday for 6 months. September 9th is a Wednesday. He doesn't show. The team scrambles. Has he been warned? Is the operation compromised? 12 hours of elevated alert follow. Then Thursday morning, he appears at his regular cafe for breakfast. Assessment. Schedule change was random variation, not operational security response. In Berlin, a neighbor complains about noise in the building 2 nights in a row, specifically footsteps in the hallway during early morning hours. The complaint reaches building management. Management mentions potentially installing security cameras in hallways. This creates a deadline. If cameras are installed before the operation executes, the extraction becomes exponentially more dangerous. The timeline compresses. The Berlin team moves their execution window earlier in the available time frame. In Rome, surveillance catches the target traveling with a second man. Unplanned. The second man is not in any intelligence database. He could be a friend, a relative, a new security handler, or a counterintelligence operative testing for surveillance. The operation cannot proceed if the target is accompanied. 24 hours of intensive investigation follow. The man is identified. A cousin visiting from Tunisia. He departs Rome on September 10th. The operation window reopens. And then the final complication. Across Europe, security services are watching each other. CIA supports quietly, providing technical assistance and liaison coordination, but maintaining strict distance from operational execution. Langley wants the network disrupted, but needs absolute deniability. American fingerprints on European assassinations would create congressional hearings and diplomatic nightmares. European partners cooperate selectively. French DGSE provides local surveillance support in Paris, but is not informed of execution details. German BND offers logistical assistance in Berlin, but believes the operation is a rendition, not a termination. Italian SISMI grants tacit approval for activity in Rome, but requests no formal briefing that would require official acknowledgement. Everyone wants results, but nobody wants fingerprints. By Thursday night, September 10th, all 6 teams report the same thing in different words. If we don't strike now, we may never see them again. The execution window opens when pattern becomes certainty. Each coordinator is confirmed sleeping in a stable location, with predictable movement within the next 24 hours. The plan moves from possible to necessary. Friday, September 11th, 1992. 0300 hours GMT. There is no dramatic radio call, no go command broadcast. That would be a vulnerability. The operation begins with synchronization, not communication. 0300 to 0315 hours. In London, the coordinator is already being shaped toward death without realizing it. A friendly contact, someone he's known for 8 months, someone he believes is a sympathetic banker willing to move money discreetly, engineers the conditions for a medical event. The contact visits the coordinator's flat at 0240 hours under the pretense of delivering time-sensitive financial documents. This isn't unusual. They've met at odd hours before. The coordinator makes tea. The contact declines but accepts water instead. The compound is already prepared. Colorless, odorless, tasteless. It triggers ventricular fibrillation through disruption of cardiac ion channels. Onset time: 12 to 18 minutes after ingestion. The delivery method exploits British hospitality. The coordinator serves water in his own glasses, never suspecting the glass handed back to him has been switched for one pre-prepared. At 0300 hours, the contact mentions feeling unwell and departs. The coordinator continues reviewing documents. At 0312 hours, he experiences the first symptoms: chest tightness, difficulty breathing, racing pulse. He reaches for his phone. The compound is working faster than projected. At 0314 hours, he collapses. The paramedics who arrive 17 minutes later will find a middle-aged man dead from apparent cardiac arrest. Toxicology screening won't search for exotic cardiac glycosides unless specifically requested. It won't be requested. The method isn't messy, it's clean. The goal is not spectacle. The goal is a body that tells no story. When emergency services arrive, the room looks normal. That's the point. If investigators see nothing, they stop digging. 0320 to 0410 hours. In Berlin, the opposite approach. Speed and violence that looks local. The apartment raid is designed to feel like a criminal intrusion or an internal dispute. Fast entry, minimal noise, no lingering. The team uses a battering ram on the door at precisely 0320 hours. Entry time: 4 seconds. The coordinator is asleep. He wakes to masked men shouting in German. The violence is overwhelming and immediate. No questions asked, no information sought. This has to look like criminals after money or a revenge killing from organized crime. 3 shots fired from a Makarov pistol, a weapon common in former East German criminal networks. All 3 shots hit center mass. The coordinator dies within 90 seconds. The team's tradecraft is about exit discipline. No shell casings left behind. All 3 are recovered. No readable patterns. The entry damage is consistent with forced entry tools available to common criminals. No traceable residue. The operatives wear gloves and shoe covers, leaving no forensic signature. Time on target: 3 minutes, 40 seconds. At 0324 hours, the team is exiting the building. At 0330 hours, they're in a vehicle driving toward a pre-positioned safe house. At 0410 hours, they've changed clothes, destroyed operational materials, and separated into individual exfiltration routes. Just absence. 0430 to 0700 hours. In Paris, the kill is delayed because the target wakes early. That's the nightmare scenario. Alertness. The team has positioned an operative as a cafe server for 3 weeks. The morning routine is mechanical. The coordinator arrives between 0700 and 0715 hours. Orders espresso. Reads Le Monde for 20 minutes. Departs. The poison is prepared for delivery through the espresso cup. But at 0645 hours, the coordinator arrives 45 minutes early. The operative isn't in position yet. The regular morning server is still working. The window begins to close. At 0658 hours, the operative arrives for his shift. The coordinator is already seated, already reading his newspaper. The regular espresso has already been served. The operative has to adapt. But the poison method is patient. It doesn't require a struggle, just access. The vulnerability exploited isn't weakness. It's routine. Humans cannot defend every sip, every pill, every familiar gesture. The body becomes the entry point. At 0720 hours, the coordinator orders a second espresso. This is unusual, but not unprecedented. The operative prepares it personally. The compound is introduced during preparation, liquid soluble, heat stable, undetectable by taste at the doses being used. The coordinator drinks it over 10 minutes. He finishes his newspaper. He leaves money on the table. He stands. At 0743 hours, he's walking down Rue de Rivoli. At 0751 hours, he's experiencing severe chest pain. At 0756 hours, he collapses on the sidewalk. Paramedics arrive within 8 minutes. They attempt resuscitation. They transport to hospital. He's declared dead at 0832 hours. Official cause of death: acute myocardial infarction. Age, stress, and lifestyle factors are cited. An autopsy is performed but finds nothing inconsistent with natural cardiac failure. The compound has already metabolized. The cafe operative finishes his shift at 1400 hours, returns to his apartment, packs one bag, and boards a train to Brussels. He'll be back in London by Saturday morning. Friday night, 2100 hours local time. In Rome, the staged accident is the most morally corrosive method because it uses the world itself as the weapon. The coordinator's apartment building is 60 years old. The electrical system is original. Building maintenance has been deferred for years. The elevator has failed twice in the past month. The building represents systemic infrastructure, neglect common in older Roman neighborhoods. MI6 engineers have studied the building systems for 4 months. They've identified a vulnerability. The main electrical panel is accessible from the basement, poorly secured, and controls power to the elevator system. At 2050 hours, an operative enters the basement. At 2053 hours, he makes a modification to the elevator's electrical system. A modification that will cause catastrophic failure under specific load conditions, but only when the elevator is in motion and only when the safety brake system is simultaneously disabled. The coordinator maintains a predictable evening routine. He walks his dog at 2100 hours every night. His apartment is on the 5th floor. He always takes the elevator down and the stairs up, a fitness habit he's maintained for 2 years. At 2105 hours, the coordinator enters the elevator with his dog. At 2106 hours, the elevator begins descent. At 2107 hours, between the 3rd and 2nd floor, the modified electrical system triggers a cascade failure. The elevator drops in free fall. The safety brake doesn't engage because it's been disabled. The elevator car impacts the basement at terminal velocity. The coordinator dies on impact. His dog survives with injuries. Emergency services find what appears to be a tragic mechanical failure in an aging building with documented maintenance problems. The investigation will focus on building code violations and landlord negligence. No one will look for sabotage because there's no reason to suspect it. The operative who made the modification is already on a train to Switzerland. The modification itself will be destroyed when investigators repair the elevator system. Physical evidence of tampering will disappear during the repair process. No gunshot, no blade, just physics and timing. The target never sees a killer, only a moment that feels like bad luck. That's what makes it effective and haunting. Saturday morning, 0930 hours. In Athens, the sniper doesn't hunt a moving man. He hunts a habit, The coordinator has rescheduled his park visit to Saturday morning after missing it the previous weekend. He arrives at 0927 hours and sits on his usual bench. He's meeting a contact, a man who handles communications with ANO's Middle Eastern headquarters. The sniper is positioned 420 meters away in a fourth-floor apartment rented 3 months earlier. The apartment's tenant, an MI6 asset, is conveniently visiting family in Crete this weekend. The shooting position was selected based on angle, distance, and escape route feasibility. The vulnerability exploited is arrogance, the belief that separation equals safety. The coordinator thinks his compartmentalized structure makes him untouchable. He doesn't know that intelligence services have mapped his entire network through patient observation, and that his predictable habits have made him more vulnerable than any headquarters building ever could. At 0934 hours, the coordinator is engaged in conversation with his contact. At 0935 hours, the sniper fires once. The Macmillan TC-50 uses 50 BMG ammunition, a round designed for material destruction, not human targets. At this range, the effect is catastrophic. The coordinator is killed instantly. His contact is unharmed but covered in blood. Witnesses see a man fall. They hear nothing. The sound of the shot, at this distance and from an elevated position, doesn't clearly register as gunfire to untrained ears. The sniper is already disassembling the rifle. At 0938 hours, he's exiting the apartment building carrying a large sports equipment bag. At 0950 hours, he's in a taxi to the airport. At 1300 hours, he's on a flight to Frankfurt using a German passport that identifies him as a sporting goods sales representative. The rifle components will be dumped in separate locations across the city. The ammunition will be dropped in the harbor. The shooting position will be scrubbed of evidence. Greek police will investigate, but find no actionable leads. The case will remain unsolved. A professional kill with no conversation, no words, no face. Saturday night, Madrid, 2320 hours. Madrid is the loudest. A car bomb is not subtle, but it's controlled. The coordinator's vehicle is a Mercedes sedan parked in a residential neighborhood. The vehicle is his security measure: armored glass, reinforced body panels, run-flat tires. He believes the car makes him safer. The explosive device is Czech-manufactured Semtex, placed beneath the driver's seat and shaped with precision charges. The blast is engineered to be narrow, enough to kill, not enough to create mass casualties that would trigger political chaos. The yield is calculated based on vehicle specifications and seat positioning. The trigger is a pressure-release detonator armed when the vehicle is parked and disarmed, when weight is removed from the driver's seat. This ensures the device detonates only when the coordinator is alone and in the vehicle, minimizing collateral risk. At 2318 hours, the coordinator enters his vehicle alone. At 2319 hours, he starts the engine. At 2320 hours, the device detonates. The blast is contained within the vehicle's armored shell, which ironically focuses the explosive energy inward. The coordinator dies instantly. The vehicle is destroyed. The explosive residue will show characteristics consistent with materials used by multiple militant organizations. Deliberately ambiguous forensic signature. The surrounding buildings sustain minor damage. 3 nearby vehicles are damaged by shrapnel and blast wave. No other casualties. Emergency response arrives within 6 minutes. Spanish police immediately suspect terrorism, but cannot definitively attribute the attack. The coordinator's identity and affiliations will take days to fully establish, during which time the trail back to British intelligence grows colder. The operative who planted the device entered Spain 2 weeks earlier as a construction contractor. He departed Spain on Friday afternoon via train to Portugal. He's already outside the investigation's geographic scope. The coordinator dies in a fireball that looks like militant conflict, not Western precision. Across 72 hours, 6 men die by 6 different hands in 6 different styles. And by early Sunday, the system doesn't just lose leaders, it loses confidence. Couriers freeze, uncertain whether to proceed with scheduled meetings. Safe houses go dark as residents abandon them without instruction. Funding routes stop moving as financial intermediaries suspend transactions pending clarity. Everyone suspects betrayal, and nobody knows where it started. That's how federated networks die, not from force, but from paranoia. By Sunday morning, September 13th, European investigators see what MI6 wants them to see. 6 separate deaths, each with its own logic. A car bombing in Madrid. Investigation focuses on Basque separatist groups and rival Palestinian factions. A sudden cardiac arrest in London. Coroner's report cites natural causes. Case closed within 48 hours. A shooting in Athens. Greek police pursue leads in organized crime and Middle Eastern gang rivalries. An elevator accident in Rome. Building inspectors cite maintenance violations. Landlord faces criminal negligence charges. A home invasion in Berlin. German police investigate connections to Russian organized crime and internal ANO disputes. A heart attack in Paris. Medical examiner finds nothing suspicious. Death certificate issued without further inquiry. Officially, there is no link. Privately, intelligence circles feel the ground tilt. Because one coincidence is tragedy, 6 is architecture. By Monday, September 14th, ANO networks across Europe begin experiencing what intelligence analysts call systemic paralysis. Communications cease. Scheduled meetings are abandoned. Safe houses are evacuated without forwarding information. Financial transactions halt mid-process. Within 2 weeks, 3 ANO operatives attempt to defect to European intelligence services, offering information in exchange for protection. Their interrogations reveal a network consuming itself from within. Accusations of infiltration, conspiracy theories about double agents, total breakdown of institutional trust. NO's European network doesn't just lose leadership, it loses the trust that makes hidden systems work. For 2 years, the organization is forced into rebuilding mode, spending resources on internal security instead of operations. That's the real strategic victory, not revenge, but interruption. The attacks that were being planned in September 1992 never happen. A bombing planned for a Frankfurt shopping district is abandoned when the logistics coordinator disappears. An assassination targeting a French judge is cancelled when the weapons supplier stops responding to contacts. A hijacking planned for December is scrapped when the team can't secure necessary documents. According to intelligence assessments from 1993 and 1994, ANO's operational capability in Europe declined by an estimated 75% following the September eliminations. The organization attempted to rebuild its coordinator network, but struggled with recruitment. Potential candidates understood that the previous coordinators had died under mysterious circumstances within 72 hours of each other. And then, 6 months later, in March 1993, MI6 makes the most dangerous move of all. It leaks the coordination during a closed NATO briefing, not for credit, for deterrence. The leak is carefully calibrated. It confirms that 6 ANO coordinators were eliminated in a coordinated operation, but provides no attribution, no methodology, no operational details. Just enough information to ensure other networks understand what happened, but not enough to compromise future operations or create diplomatic incidents. The message isn't, "We can kill you." The message is, "We can synchronize across borders, silently. And you won't see it until you're already dead." The intelligence community response is mixed. American services express private approval while maintaining public distance. European partners acknowledge effectiveness while raising concerns about sovereignty and rule of law. Israeli intelligence reportedly requests a detailed briefing on methodology. The cost is quieter, because when states normalize killing as policy, it changes the meaning of law, alliance, and restraint. The operation succeeds, but it also sets a precedent that cannot be uninvented. Over the following decade, at least 3 other operations would follow Continental Sweep's model. Synchronized eliminations across multiple jurisdictions, compartmentalized execution, deliberate method diversity to mask coordination. The architecture becomes a template. The strategic calculation was that preventing future attacks justified extrajudicial killing. The operational assessment was that courts moved too slowly, and arrests created more problems than they solved. The moral assessment was never formally documented. Operation Continental Sweep stopped a network responsible for logistic support of attacks that killed over 40 people between 1987 and 1991. It likely prevented additional attacks that would have killed dozens more. The coordinators eliminated were not soldiers defending their country or freedom fighters resisting occupation. They were professional facilitators of violence against civilian targets for financial and ideological purposes. But it also proved that democracies will execute enemies in secret when courts are too slow and politics too fragile. It proved that intelligence services can coordinate assassination across allied nations without parliamentary oversight or judicial review. It proved that rule of law has exceptions when the threat is deemed sufficiently urgent. One side calls it protection, the difficult, necessary actions that prevent mass casualties and disrupt terror networks before they can strike. Operations like Continental Sweep, they argue, save lives by removing the infrastructure that makes terrorism possible. Arrests create trials that expose sources and operational methods. Extradition takes years. Legal proceedings allow networks to adapt and relocate. Sometimes the only option is direct action. The other calls it assassination diplomacy. The moment democratic states abandoned legal constraint and adopted the methods of their enemies, when intelligence services become judge, jury, and executioner, they argue. The distinction between legitimate government and criminal organization becomes philosophical rather than operational. The 6 coordinators had no trial, no defense, no chance to surrender. Their deaths may have been strategically justified, but they were still extrajudicial killings carried out by agents of democratic governments. The families of the 6 coordinators never received confirmation of what happened. Official death certificates cite natural causes, accidents, and unsolved crimes. Children grew up believing their fathers died randomly. Only years later, through investigative journalism and declassified fragments, did the architecture become partially visible. The operatives who carried out the eliminations returned to normal lives. Some retired from service. Some continued in intelligence work. According to one former MI6 officer who spoke anonymously in 2008. None of the operators expressed public regret, but several requested reassignment to analytical roles rather than operational positions after Continental Sweep. The question that remains is not whether the operation succeeded tactically. It clearly did. The question is whether democracies that normalize covert assassination retain the moral authority to condemn other nations for doing the same. If eliminating 6 men prevented mass attacks across Europe, was Operation Continental Sweep a necessary defense? or the moment intelligence services became the very thing they claimed to stop? What's your take? If you had been in the room when this operation was proposed, would you have authorized it? Or does crossing that line, even against people facilitating terrorism, fundamentally compromise the principles democratic societies claim to defend? Drop your perspective in the comments. And if this story made you reconsider what intelligence work actually means in practice, hit that like button and share this with someone who thinks espionage is just about gathering information.